Hello, people of St. Andrew's, coming to you today from the sacristy of the church. Thought we'd spend a few moments today talking about incense and its use in worship. This is a thurible. This is what we put incense in, and the person who carries the thurible is called a thurifer. And as a purely practical matter, what happens with incense is we heat up some little discs of charcoal, put them in the thurible, and then the actual incense, which is a bunch of different types of spices that have been bound together with some sort of resin or gum and then ground into a powder. Those spices are put on the hot coals. They produce the smoke that carries the aroma through the church. As with so many things in our liturgy, the use of incense travels in several different directions all at once as part of our worship experience. On the one hand, incense travels toward God, and traveling, I'm speaking here sort of ritually or metaphorically in addition to literally. The use of incense is a way of lifting our eyes, of lifting our hearts, of lifting our attention upwards and outwards from ourselves as we gather for worship and toward the holy, to put ourselves more in communication with the holy and be more open to the word, to the speaking of the holy. Indeed, in Psalm 141, there is the line, "Let my prayer be set forth before you like incense." Let our worship be set before you like incense. And like so many things in our liturgy as well, incense is also an offering to God. It is something we think to be pleasing to God. It is something dear. Incense is not hugely expensive, but it's also, especially in the olden days, it was not cheap. So we're giving something pleasing and sacrificial, if you will, to the one who creates and sustains us. And indeed, the use of incense goes far back into the Hebrew Bible in Exodus, where the injunction is, when you use incense in worship, use it not for yourself, but make it holy unto the Lord. But we do also, despite Exodus, I think, ritually use incense in a way that helps us as well. As we use incense, as we sense various parts of the church, we're consecrating them. We are setting them apart again, acknowledging them as holy, both the place we have entered and the time we have entered, our liturgical time of worship. Those are holy things, and by sensing them, we reconfirm, we recommit to their holiness. And also, incense is a point of differentiation. I would dare say that in most of our lives, there is not much use of incense. The smells that we smell that come from the incense are unusual to our noses. They are not the smells we're used to smelling during the regular part of the day. So again, all of this draws us from our day-to-day humdrum lives that we may have been at even as we come up the steps of the church. But once we enter the nave in which we come to worship, we want to be drawn more into the presence of the holy and open ourselves to that presence. And incense can serve that function. Typically, we sense items in the church that are of sacramental import. Those things that help reveal God to us as we sit here on earth at somewhat of an intellectual remove from God. So the things that we use in worship that are revelatory include the font, which it reveals God's grace to us through the sacrament of baptism. The altar, which reveals God's grace and specifically Christ's grace to us through the sacrament of Holy Eucharist. And the ambo, the eagle lectern, if you will, in the church, where the word of God is read and proclaimed. That reading and proclaiming too is also a revelation of the grace of God. And at the time of communion, we also sense you, the people. We sense ourselves, because as Anglicans, we believe that we are embodiments of Christ. We are a form of Christ to the world. And as we leave this ritual time. We are to go out and proclaim that word and proclaim that bread and that wine that we have eaten and proclaim the grace of our baptism to all who will hear it. So my plan has been to introduce incense, both its beauty and its being so extraordinary, only at our principal feasts, which are few during the year: Christmas, Epiphany, Easter, Ascension, Pentecost, and Trinity, as well as All Saints' Day. I always forget All Saints' Day. And on our one patronal feast of the year, the day that we celebrate St. Andrew, who is our patron, our church is named after him, and also those few times of the year where we actually make an outdoor procession, weather permitting. Palm Sunday and Rogation Day come to mind. So those are the times we would use incense. There are parishes throughout the Episcopal Church that use incense far more frequently than that. And while I appreciate incense, I like its smell, I like the visual of these billowing clouds of smoke, somehow the numinous coming into our lives. While I like all that, I think it can be overdone. And I think the routine use of incense sometimes can undercut the very holiness that it's seeking to impart. Just a word, finally, of practicality. I use a very sparing amount, maybe half a teaspoon, maybe even a teaspoon of incense on those times when we use it to keep the amount of smoke down, more to create the aroma than to create, again, this great billow of smoke. And we always contact our fire alarm company and deactivate the alarm from automatically contacting the fire department. So there will be no false alarm. We don't want to put that burden on the fire department for sure. So that's a word about incense, or several words about incense. If you have any other questions about them, feel free to let me know. If you want to give me any feedback on the use of incense, I would welcome that as well. God bless you, and God bless the work you do in God's kingdom.